Have you ever been in a moment where everything in your life technically still works, but nothing actually feels connected anymore? Because that's the question, is this thing on? Keep circling. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly tapping you on the shoulder until you can't ignore it.
Man, I wish I had a punchline.
This is a small movie by design. And if you go in expecting big emotional speeches or flashy reinvention arcs, I think you might miss what it's actually doing. Because this isn't about blowing your life up. It's about realizing you've already drifted and deciding whether if you even want to reach back. Directed by Bradley Cooper, Is This Thing On is a character-driven comedy drama about separation, reinvention, and the strange vulnerability of starting over when you're old enough to know better, but still not sure what you're doing. Will Arnett stars as Alex, a man whose marriage is ending not with betrayal or catastrophe, but with quiet resignation. Laura Dern plays Tess, his wife, and their relationship is the emotional spine of the film. Not because they're fighting constantly, but because they're not.
Every day I wake up and I hope you're dead.
And if you've ever been in a relationship where the silence says more than the arguments, this is going to hit uncomfortably close. What the film does really well is resist the urge to make either of them the villain. You're not pushed to take sides. You're asked to sit in the discomfort of two people who still care, still understand each other, but no longer know how to exist in the same emotional space. And that's where the title starts to mean something. Alex, in the middle of this separation, begins exploring stand-up comedy, not because he's chasing fame and not because he's suddenly discovered a lifelong passion, but because he needs somewhere to speak honestly without being interrupted. Comedy becomes less about punchlines and more about permission. Permission to say the things he doesn't know how to say anywhere else.
Is this thing on?
If you're expecting laugh out loud comedy, let me reset that expectation right now. This isn't that movie. The humor here is observational, awkward, sometimes painfully dry. You'll laugh, but often right after you wince, because the jokes land the way real conversations land when someone overshares just a little too much. Will Arnett is doing some of the most restrained work of his career here. If you mostly associate him with heightened comedy, this performance might surprise you. He plays Alex as someone who's constantly performing calm while internally scrambling to understand who he's supposed to be next. And the stand-up scenes aren't about killing the room, they're about survival.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that information.
Laura Dern, meanwhile, brings a grounded emotional intelligence to Tess that keeps the film honest. She's not written as the wife holding him back, and she's not framed as cold or unfeeling. She's someone who's already done a lot of the emotional processing Alex is only beginning to attempt. Watching the imbalance in where they are emotionally is one of the film's quietest but sharpest observations. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, take a quick second to hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more movie fans like you. And while you're at it, subscribe so you don't miss future reviews, rankings, and breakdowns just like this. All right, let's jump back in and keep the review rolling. Bradley Cooper's direction is confident in its restraint. He doesn't over-stylize these moments. He lets scenes breathe, sometimes uncomfortably so. Conversations don't end with clean resolutions. Pauses linger, eye contact breaks, and you can feel the movie daring you to stay present instead of waiting for the next plot beat.
The more you know who you are and what you want, the less you let things upset you.
The supporting cast adds texture without ever hijacking the story. You'll recognize familiar faces, but no one feels like they're there to steal scenes. Everyone exists in orbit around this central emotional question. When the structure of your life changes, how much of you is still intact? And that's where I think Is This Thing On might test you as a viewer. Because the film's commitment to subtlety means it's not going to hand you big emotional catharsis on a schedule. If you're looking for explosive confrontations or grand declarations, you may find yourself leaning forward, waiting for something that never quite arrives. But if you're willing to meet the film where it lives, in hesitation, in half-formed thoughts, in moments that feel unresolved, there's something deeply human here.
Did you ever reach a point in your life where you say to yourself, this is the best I'm ever gonna look, the best I'm ever gonna feel, the best I'm ever gonna do?
The stand-up comedy thread works best not as a narrative engine, but as a mirror. Watching Alex try jokes that don't quite land or stumble through vulnerability in front of strangers feels less like a career pivot and more like emotional exposure therapy. And you can feel the difference between when he's performing and when he's actually communicating. Visually, the film keeps things grounded. There's no attempt to glamorize the process of starting over. Locations feel lived in, lighting feels natural. This is a movie that wants you to feel like you're sitting across from someone at a table, not watching them from a distance.
Sometimes empty page presents most possibilities.
What I appreciated most is that the film never pretends there's a single right answer. It doesn't tell you whether separation is failure or growth. It doesn't frame reinvention as inherently noble. It simply shows you what it feels like to stand in that in-between space where the old version of your life no longer fits, but the new one hasn't taken shape yet. By the time the film reaches its final stretch, you're not waiting for a twist. You're waiting for clarity, emotional clarity, not narrative shock. And the movie understands that clarity doesn't always look like certainty. Sometimes it just looks like honesty. So here's where I land. Is this thing on? Isn't trying to impress you, it's trying to connect with you. And whether that connection works will depend entirely on how willing you are to sit with quiet discomfort, unresolved feelings, and conversations that don't end cleanly. For that, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. Not because it's flashy, not because it reinvents anything, but because it understands something very real. Sometimes the hardest part of change isn't letting go, it's admitting you don't know who you are without what you lost. So what do you think? A thoughtful, grounded look at reinvention, or a film that plays things a little too quietly for your taste? Drop your thoughts below. And me, I'll leave you with this. Sometimes the most important question isn't whether anyone is listening, it's whether you're finally ready to speak.